Hello, hello, and I know you can't see me at the moment, but you can hear me. Just to say hi to everyone in the chat. Hello, Electro Bunny. Thanks for resubscribing via Prime. Hello, Missschips, who's part of this stream, and hello, Clumsy Jedi. I appreciate you being here, and I'm sure more people will be here. And if I didn't say hi to you, it's because Twitch hasn't informed me of your presence yet. But we are going to do a how to play Balatro presentation slash stream. So we're going to start with a few tips, suggestions on how to potentially get your first win in a run at Balatro. But I am not here alone. I am here with, for starters, our learner slash player when we start playing, Missschips. Missschips, say hi.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, and let me know how that is in regards to audio. Andy, you Art popping in with the first what up, and not just Missschips here, also a fellow learner slash commentator, the lovely TheWay. TheWay, say hi.
Heidi ho, y'all.
There we go. So it's going to be me, them two. We're going to jump into this presentation. If you're in the chat, if you have any questions about things I'm talking about, don't hesitate to ask. If you're on Discord chatting with me, please do not hesitate to interject. But we're going to jump straight into it. It's funny, when I do, I don't want to talk about exactly what I do, but what I do outside of Twitch. Hey, subscription! There we go. Electro Bunny's excited. But yeah, what I do outside of Twitch is very much in the realm of training. So this is something that usually I'll wait a minute or two before I start just to let people roll in. But it's been like 7, so let's get it started. So keep in mind, this is beginner's tips and tricks. This is not how you do every single nook and cranny. But this should hopefully give you enough content to understand, 1, how to play the game, and 2, how to get that first win. So the agenda today here. Firstly, we have what to do before you play. A couple of things to keep in mind as you're kind of shifting your mindset into the world of Balatro. We have selecting a deck. Yes, you do have the option to select the deck, and I'll talk about what exactly that means in a moment. Blinds. In regards to what blinds are and why they're important. Again, right now it might not mean much, but hopefully by the end of this you'll have at least somewhat of an idea. Playing your first hand. Exactly what happens when you actually start playing, what does that look like, and what are things to look out for. You have a shop breakdown, which is a breakdown on what the shop looks like. Essentially, hold on, yeah, there we go. So yeah, so you have a shop breakdown. Pretty much every time in between each round, I'll talk about this in more detail, you get the opportunity to visit a shop. When you visit this shop, there are certain things you should look out for, and I'll explain more or less what they do. Then you also have tips on getting your first win. So we're going to go over a couple of tips straight up that are based on not just winning your first round, but also winning your first run in Balatro. You are 100% good. Now, any questions so far? Oh, before we even start with anything else, actually, I'm a firm believer in there's no such thing as a foolish question. So do not hesitate to ask any question you have in regards to the topic at hand. And if you are interested in receiving a copy of this presentation, I will be more than happy to share it. I will absolutely be sharing it with everyone that's in this thing. So any questions so far from anyone before we just start jumping into anything? Or so far so good?
So far, so good.
Okay, great.
Good bullet points.
Thank you. So before you play, Balatro is a poker-themed, I think that's super important, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit, roguelike game. For those that don't know roguelikes, usually there's a random component. It's permadeath. Once you lose, if you lose a round, that's it. You're done. You start from scratch. You don't have any items. You don't have anything you've unlocked. You're just back to scratch. And it's a deck building game. It's important to note that it is a deck building game, and that is the major component that separates it from a poker themed game. Because it's entirely possible that later on, by the end of the game, you have a deck with like 10 aces in them, or a deck with 25 heart cards in them. This segues into my next point here. This is not a traditional poker game. you can deck adjust using a variety of items, and it's required to succeed. So if you try to play this like straight up poker, like, oh, I just need to play this like I would normal poker, that'll get you by the first couple of rounds. I would even go as far as saying maybe the first 4 or 5 rounds. But if you have not done anything to adjust your deck, to enhance your deck, you're going to find yourself losing some way about halfway through. Each playthrough is considered a run. So if you hear me say the word run, I'm talking about a session of playing the game. And the goal is to score enough points in 24 rounds, which are broken down into 8 ante, so 3 rounds per ante, to win a run. So we'll talk about that in a little more detail a little later, but just so you know what you're expected to do, you're going to play cards, poker-esque cards. You're going to get points, and with those points, you want to progress to the next round. This is available on a wide range of devices. I have it on the Switch. We'll be playing it on the Switch. You can also get it on your phone. You can get it on the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox 360. I mean, not Xbox 360, Xbox. Wow. But it's probably playable. If they decided to retroactively port it, you probably could. This is not a graphically intensive game. I feel like most consoles or most devices that were created within the past 10 years could probably run this with little to no problem. And the prices range from 10 to 15 bucks. This game frequently goes on sale, but to me it's a what I call a sneaky sale, in that it's usually just 10% off. So it still pops up in everything like radar for sale and such, but it's still in the realm of $10 to $15. And you can edit the cosmetics of your deck. You can adjust the shaking. There is a shaking component to show how like hard of a hand you're playing and so on and so forth. This is all adjustable in the settings menu. I will show you what that looks like a little later before we get to start playing. 360, yeah, showing our age to the nth degree here. Deck building the night before Valentine's Day is wild. You'll be surprised. That's not the only thing that's wild. This guide is intended to help you get your first win, and it does not cover all aspects of the game. So there will be certain things when we play that'll probably pop up. I'll explain it as briefly as possible. I'm just explaining the things, like I said, that will get you to complete your first run. But once you start doing challenge modes and things like that, you'll have to learn a bit more. And if everyone's receptive, I don't know, maybe in the future I'll do like a advanced Balatro. But for now, the goal is not trying to overload you, just trying to make sure you know what's happening when you see it. Any questions?
I feel like that's the COA bullet point. It's like, don't sue me if you don't learn everything.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, but it's a very accurate one. There are certain things that I know for a fact I could have talked about, but I stopped myself, one, because I don't want to spend a whole hour just yelling at you about this game, even though I'm probably going to do that. But just, you know, I want to actually play it while I'm yelling about it. But then also as well, there's just, I don't want to overload you. The goal isn't for you to become a Balatro pro. It's for you to understand how it's meant to be played and get some enjoyment out of it. Hence why we're here. Who is it good for? Gaming's for everyone. Whee! Okay, so when you first hit play, you'll be selecting a deck, and I have "and chips" in quotations. And not because Missschips has joined us.
It's not me.
Yeah. you do not select Missschips. Anonikins flex up to 4. Me and Charlie were comparing our deck sizes before stream. We absolutely were not. But mine's definitely bigger because I'd be deck building.
It's all about those deck enhancements.
Absolutely. I was telling you about those 10 aces. I wasn't joking. I don't know what that means. Moving forward, so decks in this game, essentially, if you want to compare it to another type of game, because this is a very unique game, so it's hard to kind of treat it like, it's hard to compare, but I will try my best to compare when I can. So decks are essentially like selecting your character. There are different types of decks, and each one provides a unique bonus. The default one, when you first start the game, is essentially the red deck. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But there are 16 decks in total that you can unlock. Nearly, the key word here is nearly, all 16 decks have a standard 52 cards with face cards, aces, and 4 suits. So if you've played a card game before, you'll know exactly what your starting deck looks like. And then the key word here is nearly, because as you unlock decks over time, they start to get a little bit more intricate. As I mentioned before, the starting deck is your red deck. I believe that is the only deck you have access to on your very first playthrough. It's very easy to start unlocking other decks, but it does take a while to unlock them all. And the advantage of this one is it provides one additional redraw. So if you don't like the cards that are in front of you, it gives you one extra opportunity to submit some to throw them away in hopes that you'll get new cards that'll give you a better hand to play. Playing through the game and completing the game unlocks more decks, as I mentioned before. As long as you don't totally bomb your first round, you more than likely will unlock the blue deck and then can build from there. So yeah, so completing a run, if you successfully go all 24 rounds, all 8 antes, it will unlock higher stakes for that deck. Higher stakes are essentially just kind of like a modifier that has the intention of increasing the difficulty. So we won't be talking about that too much because, again, the goal is to get through that first run, but just so you know, when you play a deck and you complete a run with it, you'll unlock a more difficult version of the game with that deck. It's kind of like New Game Plus, but you don't get anything. You're still starting from kind of that scratch. Does everything make sense so far?
Kind of.
There we go.
Play a game,
so.
get more cards or
Yes,
decks.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, this part we're going to skim over. I'm not going to talk about this part for too long, but again, if you want a copy of this presentation, you'll be able to look at it in detail. But this is the full list of decks, essentially the advantage of them, and what you need to do to unlock them. So just to go over a few, like I said, the default red, you get a +1 discard. Then you'll unlock the blue relatively quickly. That gives you an extra hand instead of an extra discard, which means you could submit a hand to play, one more than normal. Going further down, it starts to get a little crazy here. You start a run with a crystal ball voucher. What is a voucher? We'll talk about that later. With the magic deck, some decks let you use extra jokers. We'll talk about that later again. They increase the hand sizes. And then my personal favorite deck to play with, which I spammed for a good while, is the checkered deck. You have a 52 card deck, but it's 26 spades and 26 hearts. So there's no clubs and diamonds, which makes life really easy when you're trying to play the game because you can just spam flushes. So I would say if you get to the point to unlock that deck and you still feel like you need to learn more about the game, I would say start unlocking stuff with that deck first and then go back to the other ones. But again, we can talk about that more a little later. So let's say we successfully picked our deck. We have the default red deck, which is what we'll work with. 24 round. I'm looking at the comments here. I've logged in too many hours. Am I the only one who's played? No, other people I think I've played. I have 135 hours logged in. I found out later. What do we got here? Andy U Art says 24 rounds, aunties, different colored decks. I think I downloaded the wrong game. Maybe. But let us go back. I digress here. So each round is broken down into, or each ante is broken down into 3 rounds. You have the small blind, big blind, and then it doesn't say here, but it's called the boss blind. So, again, blinds are essentially rounds within an ante, so think stages and levels. If you're a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, if you remember the first Sonic game had 3 stages, or 3 levels per stage. Or 3 stages per levels. I said that backwards. Oh yeah, that's a super good comparison here. But that's essentially how it works. In one ante, you have the small blind, big blind, and then the boss blind, and then the ante goes up. So 3 blinds in each ante. The small blind is the baseline round. That is basically the bare minimum you need to get by in this ante. With that, you usually, when you win it, you'll get a certain amount of reward. The reward is usually the lowest amount out of all the rounds in that ante. After that, you go to the big blind. It's similar to the small blind, I guess. The big blind is similar to the small blind, but the score required is higher and the reward is larger. So pretty much do what you did in the small blind, but more. Does that make sense?
I actually have a question.
Yes.
I see the option to skip reward. Why would one ever skip the reward?
Good eye. I will address that later in the presentation. But there's
I
definitely
apologize.
no. Don't apologize. I want these questions. I want these questions because there's always a chance that I don't address that. I'm happy that I do though. But I do address that. But that is a good point. You do have the option to skip blinds. There's definitely a risk and reward component to it. I'll talk about it more in a little bit. But then after the big... Anything else?
No, I just said cool.
Okay. And then last but not least, you have the boss blind. These require the most amount of points within that ante, and have higher rewards, which give you the most amount of money for completing it. And there is a modifier. So not only is it you have to do more, but there's usually something that's handicapping you. So for example, you might have one less hand available, or you might lose $1 for every card played. Usually boss blinds will be the things that F you up. Everything could be running smoothly, and then all it takes is for you to get one bad boss blind. So like for example, I mentioned that deck that's just spades and hearts. It's possible that a boss blind says heart cards aren't worth anything. So that's like the drizzling shits to get when you're playing. But it happens, and it is random. It changes every time. You'll start to see familiar ones as you continue to play. You'll notice that they do repeat. I don't know the exact amount of bosses there are, but I think there's something along the lines of, I want to say between 12 and 20. So to win, you must complete 8 antes, which is 24 rounds. So pretty much what you see on the right side here, you have to do that times 8, and that's how you unlock, and that's how you complete the run. There is an endless mode that you can play after, but it doesn't matter if you get to endless mode. It counts as you completing the game regardless. And here's your question. It is possible to skip a small or big blind. You can't skip the boss blinds. If you do, you will not receive any reward money, but you will receive the skip reward. And that reward will vary. Sometimes it might be, it might double the money you currently have. Sometimes the goal might be you'll unlock a pack. We'll talk about what packs are later. Sometimes it might level up a particular type of hand. We'll talk about that in a little bit later too. Does anyone have any questions so far? Well, Andy, you are... Oh, wait. So, Saintly is asking who I'm playing with. We are here with Missschips and TheWay. Andy, you ask, is this the game or did you make a PowerPoint presentation? Serious question. I made a PowerPoint presentation. We will be getting into the game until about another 10 minutes. Is the big boss addiction? I feel like it is, but no. That might be my big boss here.
Is that a Metal Gear Solid reference?
I think it might have been. When you jump in, this is essentially what the game will look like. So in a couple of minutes, we're actually going to jump into the game. I just want to show you what the interface is. You'll start with a couple of cards in your hand. You can submit up to 5, and then you can also discard. So let's talk about main areas in this space here. Number 1, your starting hand. So just below where that starting hand appeared, that is the hand you start with. You can choose up to 5 cards to either submit, or you can choose up to 5 cards to discard. If you discard, you're essentially throwing those cards away for that round, and you will get new cards in replacement of. You have a limited amount of discards and hands you can submit. This next area, just above on the top in the northern area here, lets you know, well, number 1, you can submit up to 5 cards for discarding or playing, which I said. But this area on top is your Joker area. We will talk about the significance of Jokers later. You can play up to 5 Jokers in a standard deck. Some decks let you play more, some let you play less. And we'll talk about what that is in a second. Then down here, you'll see the remaining hands and remaining discards. This is important to keep in mind. I'm not going to lie. I have lost rounds because my stupid ass did not pay attention to how many hands I had left, and I played something lower, or I didn't discard when I should have to get more points. So it's super important to remember that's in the corner there and be mindful of how many hands and discards you have. Then up here, you have your score to beat on the upper left corner. It'll tell you in this case, you need 450 points. And then the round score on the bottom is how many points you have now. So obviously, as you progress and you play through, it will go higher and higher, and it will vary between antes and rounds. Any questions so far about this?
Not yet.
Okay, not yet. Cool. All right, so poker hand examples. This is somewhat important. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Got you. So I lost my presentation. Shucks. Oh, there we go. So these are some examples of poker hands. These are not the only poker hands you can play. This game contains secret poker hands you can play. Maybe I'll talk about them later, but for now, this is what's important. Again, I don't expect you to remember all of this. I'll just briefly skim through it. High card means you just play your highest card on itself. Pair is 2 cards of the same rank, so like 2 8s. 2 pair is 2 sets of cards with the same rank, so you play like a pair of 2s and a pair of 4s. That counts as 2 pair. 3 of a kind is 3 of the same rank. Straight is 5 cards in consecutive order. It doesn't matter what order they're in as long as they're all next to each other. So you can play 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can play 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen. Aces count as the highest and the lowest, so you can actually do ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 if you want to as well. Flush is 5 cards in the same suit. It doesn't matter what they are, as long as they're all hearts, they're all spades, it'll count as a flush. Full house is essentially a 3 of a kind played alongside a pair. 4 of a kind is 4 of the same rank. Straight flush is when you play 5 cards in order, like a straight, but they're all in the same suit, like a flush. And then you have royal flush, which is an ace, king, queen, jack, 10 in the same suit. So all of these are worth things. The ones that I have in blue are my personal favorite to play. 2 pair could be very helpful early on in the game when you don't have any modifiers and you're just trying to play some things to get the points going. Straights are phenomenal. They're not as easy to hit, but they give you a good amount of point spread. And then flushes are relatively easy as well, and they also give you a decent point spread as well. So again, if you don't know poker, this is the slide for you. This information alone will get you past the first couple of rounds, but you will not beat the game with just this information. Straights are overrated. A5, not 6. The more you play with it, the higher your deck gets. Got it. Yeah, absolutely. Moving forward here. So, as I mentioned before, after you complete a round, you will be greeted with the shop. The shop looks something along the lines of what you see on the left. So, you have that there. Shops contain individual items and booster packs that you can purchase using the money that you got from completing blinds. These items are randomized and will change each shop visit. So, it's possible that you'll see the same thing pop up 2 times in a row in a shop, or you might not see it for a couple of rounds, or you might only see it once and never again. For $5, you can re-roll for more items, but not packs. So if you have 2 packs, the packs are on the bottom here. I don't think you can see my mouse. I just totally try to do something I do at work. Is my stream paused? Are you guys still able to see it?
So Discord, yeah, no, we're back up.
Oh,
So
you're
I
back.
was
There we go.
watching it
Just came back.
on the Twitch
Okay,
window, but, yeah.
that was my fault. Yeah, that was 100% me. But for $5, you can re-roll individual items, but you cannot re-roll packs. Once you purchase them, you can't purchase more for that round or that shop visit. You do not visit the shop if you skip a blind. This is super important because, again, when you skip a blind, you might think, oh, I could just skip a blind and then hop into the shop. No, you'll lose that opportunity, and that's important because sometimes the things in the shop will be better than the reward itself. Make sense so far? Kind of?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh. A little concerned, but it's all right. Well, once we actually start going through it, it'll probably make more sense. So what can you find in the shop? Jokers. They're constant modifier cards. When you buy a joker, it's pretty much there, and it will modify what happens. So, like, for example, if you get a joker that says adds +8 multiplier to pairs, every time you play a pair, it's going to be worth more now because of that joker. If you're a Magic the Gathering fan, think of enchantments. Essentially, jokers are enchantments that enhance your gameplay. In my opinion, this is the most important item in the game. Later on, it doesn't become as important, but from a beginner standpoint, this is essentially what's going to carry you to your win. So you can start with some, purchase some, it gets the ball rolling, and then sell them later and buy new ones if you need to. Tarot cards. These modify the cards you select in your deck. So for example here, you can, a tarot card is essentially something that would modify your suit. You know, you can set it up so that maybe you replace 3 diamond cards with heart cards instead, or maybe the cards are now worth double the points or something along the lines of that. Spectral cards are similar to tarot cards. However, they modify cards in your deck on a greater scale, and they may come at a cost. So for example, a spectral card may give you 2 extra aces in your deck, but in exchange for that 2 aces, it may destroy a random card. So it's important to read. If you're going with the spectral cards, in my opinion, I would say this is probably in the order of importance, at least at the moment. Spectral cards would probably be my least favorite to play, then tarot cards, and then jokers are essentially the foundation of your deck. Planet cards. They increase the worth of a played hand. If you are a fan of playing pairs, After a while, pairs aren't going to be worth something, but if you get planet cards to level up the significance of your pairs will be worth something. Does that make sense? I feel like that's like the trickiest thing.
Makes sense.
Okay.
I believe so, yeah.
Then you have voucher. It's limited to 1 per floor, so pretty much every ante you get a voucher opportunity. This is a permanent advantage provided for the remainder of your run. So for example, the shop might become a little cheaper. You might increase the probability of planet cards coming, something along the lines of that. And then you have packs. Packs pretty much cost more than an individual item purchase, so like some of the above you'll see, but it provides more possible options. So you're kind of paying like $1 more to have the choice as opposed to just picking what is in front of you. This also includes individual cards. Sometimes you can buy a pack and you can add like an extra ace or something along the lines of that. I see you put your pants back on. Got you. I don't know if that was me. I do have my pants on though. But yeah. So, okay, we're heading towards the end of this presentation at least. So, a couple of miscellaneous tips on getting your first win here. So, number one, get jokers that complement your playstyle. If you really like playing 2 pairs, try to set yourself up to make 2 pairs as deadly as possible. It will get to a time where you'll have to play something outside of what you're comfortable with, but if you're very stubborn in that regard, you can actually get far with playing whatever you want to play if you know what complements it. So look for, like, you know, again, if you're playing 2 pairs all the time, make sure you have things that enhance your 2-pair playing. Money collects interest. You don't have to spend it all at once. Sometimes it's good to actually save your money between shops because that means the next round you'll get extra money. So to be specific here, you can get up to $5. So if you, for every $5 you have saved when you complete a round, you will get an extra $1 in interest. So theoretically, if you're playing the game and you have $25, even if you did terrible and barely just got by that round, you'll get an extra $5 by default. Skip a blind only if the reward is absolutely worth it and you comfortably beat the previous round. If you're struggling to beat blinds, don't skip one because more than likely you're not going to be able to beat the next one without any preparation. And then also don't just skip ones just because you're doing really good and it's like, oh, I don't want to do this, I'll just skip this, whatever. I rarely skip a blind. Only if things are going exceptionally well and this is enhancing it. So like, let's say I'm doing a run and I'm just going crazy with flushes and I'm dominating with flushes, but I see that maybe the skip bonuses level up flushes by 3 levels. I might take that just because I already know I'm doing really well and it's only going to further enhance my gameplay. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Create your gameplay early based on what's provided. It is random, so again, if you're stuck on just playing like 2 pairs or something along the lines of that, you might not find the things to complement that. But if you start seeing a lot of things that are focused on straights, maybe you want to shift your strategy to that. Also important is focusing on your game plan. Don't start by going like, I want to do this. Oh, but then I want to do this. But then I want to do this. Sometimes it's okay to wait. Sometimes it's okay not to buy anything in the shop and save your money until you find something that works for you. So keep that in mind. And then remember, it is randomized. Not all runs will be for you. I have definitely had some runs, quite a few runs, especially early on, where you're just going to get effed. Like, no matter what you do, it's not going to work out for you. The game has, I think, millions of possibilities that can happen. I think a most common one is, remember that deck I mentioned where you have the 26 spades, 26 hearts? I have gotten that situation where like the boss blind was heart, I can't play hearts, and then my next 2 redraws were just heart cards. So again, it's all random. Sometimes it's just not for you. It's okay. Sometimes it's good to know when to quit, but I wouldn't quit now. I just keep writing it out as you learn how to play the game. A couple of extra bonus tips here, and then we're done. The order of your jokers matter. Some jokers do better when they're behind other jokers. Some jokers do better when they're in front of other jokers. So be mindful of the order of your jokers. Make use of discards. Don't be afraid to discard cards. Sometimes you just need to. I know that early on I had an issue with this. I'd rather play a bad hand than use a discard. But discards make a huge difference, especially in the early game. No more discards. Sometimes playing a bad hand will help. If you ran out of discards and you're trying to figure something out, maybe you're one card away from a flush, and you know that flush is going to be worth a good amount of points. It might be worth playing like 2-3 bad cards, getting a little bit of points, and then pretty much overcompensating for your next hand. Most voucher cards have an advanced version that's available after a certain amount of purchases. You don't have to worry about this at first, but if you really like something, make sure you buy the voucher for that, because after a couple of purchases, you'll unlock the more advanced version, which is good to have. Seeded codes allowed others to try your run, but don't unlock rewards. So if you see a seed code and you're like, what does that mean? It essentially means you can copy that code and give it to someone, and they can try to do the same run you just did. Flushes are overall the best hand to play. If you're not sure what to play and you have no poker experiences, in my opinion, working towards flushes, it's relatively easy because you have a 1 in 4 chance of your cards popping up, at least from the beginning, and you get a good amount of points for it consistently. But again, it doesn't have to be the only thing you play. If you go in trying to play only flushes, you might realize that they're only giving you John Cena.
Hate when that happens.
Hello. Flush your deck to enhance play. Yes, yeah, honestly, Andy, you're getting it perfectly. And then try new decks to find out what works best for you. I've completely changed my playstyle in this game 3 times from start to now. It absolutely helps that your game will evolve over time. So,
question here,
yes.
actually. You may have covered this. Apologies if you did.
Okay.
The order of your jokers matters. How and when does a player get the option to reorder their joker cards?
Pretty much every time you're in a round. So
Okay.
as soon as you start playing, at any point in time, you can reorganize them. There are some boss blinds that will prohibit you from doing so. It's usually the last one, to be honest. But you can do it almost as soon as you start getting the cards.